Welcome back. My name is Ebony, and I'm bringing you for the first time in over a year a different mug talk. This is not the normal espresso that, which is 15 minutes or less on a topic that is trendy, trending, or on my heart and mind. Instead, I'm bringing you something that's a little bit longer in content. It's still going to be a coffee style chat. I wish I had brought back my normal co host, which is Tiffany, but I wanted this to be more of an intimate setting because, these are going to be strictly my opinions, my thoughts, and again, depending on who might think about it, this could be a topic that is controversial. So today I am talking about my meaning of September 11th. And what does that mean to me? So I'm going to kind of take you through this view from my viewpoint of September 11th. And actually, I'm going to provide a little more context about me, how I think about it. And so I'm going to build in an additional 10 years prior to September 11, 2001. So I'm going to kind of build out a timeline of kind of these historical events that were really, really important. And then I'm going to give you an understanding of some of the flashpoints that kind of built into my mind of what was really occurring prior to September 11th. Give you the where was I, what was I doing type of speech about September 11th. And then talk about when I truly started to understand the war on terrorism. When did that really truly had meaning for me? And then give you kind of the so what now? What is the true meaning for September 11th to me now? And what do I understand it as? So that's your guide. But what I really love about different mug talk is that I get to do a little bit of talking about, well, my mug. So I am bringing you this mug. It is obviously a Baby Yoda. I got this for my birthday last year, 2 years ago. One of my friends I used to work with, a person I truly think is amazing and special to me, got it for me because they know I'm a huge Star Wars fan, even though I'm also a huge Star Trek fan. We could do a whole debate just on that, but that's not what this is about. What was important about this one is that it arrived on my birthday. I'm appreciative and I love it because it's obviously someone that knows me very well. And today I'm drinking a simple breakfast blend. I don't want to be up all night, but I had a taste for coffee while I was doing this. So that is my mug. I'm sure you could find this probably on Amazon or something close to it if you are a friend of The Mandalorian. And trust me, I can't wait for the next season. So we're going to see. Right now I'm trying to get through the season of, The Witcher, which I'm a fan with. Somebody want to talk about that? Let's have a discussion. I love The Witcher, but yeah, there's my mug. And so, with this, we are going to start on our topic. Let's start with this timeline. Go. Okay, we are back for the timeline. All right, so I'm going to try to take you through. And I'm going to be reading because I'm trying to do the right timeline, right? I did build out like a real timeline of things I want to talk about. So this timeline I'm trying to give you is going to be pretty quick. I'm going to take you from 1990 through 2011. And that has significance of its own. You will quite understand the timeline. I've kind of given it away, or actually I don't think I have, kind of given away my age. And I'm okay with that. I like my age. So let's start with this timeline, and I'm going to take you all the way back to 1990 because there were some important things that were building into my understanding of war. Of then what they weren't even calling it terror attacks. They were calling it simply what it was, like bombings or shootings, and then it would just tell you what occurred rather than become, and you'll see even the things that we started calling things changed over time, especially after 2001. So here we go. So 1991 is where I want to start. I said 1990 because I just remember the Hubble telescope being launched. So I thought that was pretty cool as a space nerd, and apparently I always have been. But what I really remember is 1991, the first Gulf War. And if anybody knows about this, is talking about kind of what we were calling the first Iraqi war against Iraq. We suspected it was over oil, but there you go. What I remember from 1991 as well is when you had the dissolution of the Cold War supposedly ends and as the USSR dissolved. What I remember from 1992 was the LA riots, beating of Rodney King, the videotaping, and kind of what happened from there. From there, I do remember, not very vividly, 1993. A truck bomb exploded in the garage of the World Trade Center. From there, what I do remember beyond vividness is talking about the Branch Davidian standoff in Waco, Texas. This one was televised so much, and this is the first time I'm really seeing what was going on in Waco, Texas. And little will be known to me years later, I would be living there for a time. What else? What else do we have? In this timeline, I also remember the 1995. We get the Oklahoma City bombing that killed 168 and wounded 800 others. We also, 1995 was the year we got the acquittal of O.J. Simpson, for those that remember this. 1996, though I vaguely remember this one, was the bombing that happened at Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia that killed 19 service members. From that year, I remember more vividly watching the Olympics and the bomb that went off that killed one and injured, I think, 100 or so more. From there, I jump into what I remember of 1999, the Columbine High School shooting. And then also what happened with all the violent tornadoes that plagued Oklahoma that year. That was big in the news. And then toward the end of 1999, you get this known thing called the Millennium Bug, Y2K bug. One of the most irrational fears that I could have possibly thought about, but everyone thought that was going to be the end, right? This computer bug was going to take out all computers, make them inoperable, and then wreak havoc. And I think that was the first time we got a clear understanding of something that could potentially take out our reliance on technology. But as we are here now, we knew that this was just, a misnomer and not true. So what was coming out important 2001? Of course, we're getting September 11th attack. They call it attack. You had the killing of nearly 3,000 people and injuries of over 6,000. And in that whole year, you had a whole bunch happen. You get the invasion of Afghanistan, starting the mark of Operation Enduring Freedom. You get the Patriot Act. You get the anthrax scares. I don't know if anybody ever remembers these. The anthrax that were being sent. Anthrax was being sent through the mail system, and there was actually some that were killed from this. You get 2002. You get the creation of Department of Homeland Security. We also get the DC sniper. And again, I remember this one because of people fearing to get gas. What I remember going into 2003, you get the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated. And I remember watching this, and you're like, whoa, that was something different. From there, I remember also in that same year, the start of the war in Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Excuse me. And then heading into the end, once you get into 2003, you do have the capture of Saddam Hussein by U.S. Special Forces. 2004 was an interesting year because you get Facebook is launched. For those prior to Facebook, we were probably using MySpace. For some reason, we all migrated over and ended up on Facebook. The reason I remember this one is because Facebook started with mostly colleges before trickling down to high school and then opening up. What I remember from heading into 2004, you have the legalization. Massachusetts legalizes same-sex marriage. and that was also something very cool to hear and listen to. 2005, something big that happened was Hurricane Katrina. There was actually a bunch of storms, but Hurricane Katrina devastated many in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. It was a storm that still has ramifications today about things dealing with national preparedness and FEMA, and Hurricane Katrina was kind of the catalyst, but some people also remember Hurricane Rita and then Hurricane Wilma happening in 2005. What I remember, 2007, was that Nancy Pelosi becomes the first female Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Remember that same year, we have a surge of troops in Iraq. There have been a bunch of military casualties happening there, and through this surge, you kind of have some reduction of casualties and some pretty key strategic victories with coalition forces and Iraqi forces that occurred after this. 2007 also marked the Virginia Tech massacre, is what they call it, a mass shooting. And heading into 2008, I remember this one because I live in Tornado Alley, so I was not living in Tornado Alley, but what I do know was talking about Super Tuesday tornado outbreaks. That kind of was a long line of storms that was spread across Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama. Things were moving. This storm was pretty big and pretty prolific at the time. What else was kind of going on? 2008, we see Hurricane Ike. Again, these natural disasters that were occurring. And then 2009, I remember by then I had joined the armed forces myself, 2007. So that's kind of why it's kind of important for me to understand and provide some context. 2009, I remember the Fort Hood shooting. 2010, Instagram. We get Instagram. Instagram is founded. From here, we get some more natural disasters with some series of tornadoes, and then kind of swings us into 2011, and this is where I kind of stop. 2011, we get the capture of Osama bin Laden, leader and suspected mastermind of the September 11 attacks. He was captured by U.S. Navy SEALs. So that's the timeline. That's a lot that happened. Those are all major events that kind of impacted my life in some way. And I kind of did a quick rundown in less than 10 minutes. But up next, I'm talking about those flashpoints that I really want to talk about. And that's next. Let's go. All right. So the first Iraqi war, the Gulf War, we will call it, was extremely important. This was one I remembered ever really seeing on TV. This was actually something that started in August 2nd of 1990. You had the Iraqi army invade Kuwait, and was met with sanctions, economically speaking. And there was a certain date in which President George H.W. Bush said that they wanted the Iraqi army out of Kuwait. So on 17 January 1991, you get the initial start of the conflict to expel those Iraqi troops from Kuwait. And it was about 5 weeks. This is the first time I'm really seeing technology being used. And why is it really important to me is because I was like 6 years old. 1991, I was 6 years old. So I remember watching this on TV. I remember the first time seeing the president really talk about what was expected of another foreign nation to not occupy these particular spaces. But what stood out vividly in mind for me was kind of the news reports. The news reports about Kuwait, what was going on, what was actually happening with the pushing back of the Iraqi forces, and more importantly, watching these visuals, these night, what do you call it, the night vision it was like the first time I've seen night vision attacks, and they were in green and basically black. So it was almost like you were part of the seeing the war, because these cameras gave you the ability to see these the gunfire and things being shot back and forth, and you could see parts of light, but it was meant to show you the first time kind of the heat signatures of certain things. So what I knew about war then was just based on what I saw on TV. Still didn't really impact me really, but why did it really stick out in my mind is because right before this time, this was kind of the news story that was. It led almost directly into the rising tensions that was coming out of Los Angeles. And so that brings me to my second flashpoint, talking about the LA riots. Why does this stick out in my mind? Not so much that it was the LA riots, but I was 7. I had family that lived in that LA area. And I guess I didn't quite understand, right, I guess I was part of that developmental stage, or just more worried about me type of stage. But I was truly afraid about the LA riots, that you'd have these groups of people that are going to come sweep across America and destroy your home and your safety and certain things. And again, irrational fear, I just remember it for what it was. It was more circled about me and my little world of what happens to me, what happens to my mom maybe, because it was just us at the time. But I was really worried that the riots would extend all the way to my home. And you were watching this in live color TV, these riots. And so the news kind of fed and perpetuated, talking about other places that potentially would start rioting and increasing tensions. And so I was, for the first time, I remember being really afraid about something that wasn't even near me. I was living in Dallas at the time. Nothing really to deal with me, but I was 7. What do you want from me? What else do I remember? 1995. You get the Oklahoma City bombing. Why did I remember this one? Well, because I was a total of 10 years old when this happened. This was my first real bombing, right? Dealing with domestic terrorism, we call it now. But then they were just calling it the Oklahoma City bombing. This was the first one I remember where my aunt, I had been to a federal building not that long before this happened. I was with my aunt who used to work for HUD, and she worked at Dallas in the federal building. And I had been just in a federal building not that long ago. So that's what I'm saying, that it kind of sticks in my mind. And this was my first real understanding about fear for someone else's life and fragility, the fragileness of life. That day, I remember being very and highly concerned about my aunt, about her whereabouts. Where is she? I really wanted to talk to her. And then the relief of understanding that person made it home. I think that was my first understanding of some people not coming back. Because that particular bombing, they talked heavily about the children that had died from the bombing. And, I don't know if I ever really had a conversation with my mom about the Oklahoma City bombing, but I do remember it very vaguely and in some intense flash because of my aunt. The thought of hearing on the news that them closing down federal buildings because of other threats, I just remember it as being a point in time that I had real fear for my aunt. And so that's kind of those flashpoints. That's kind of like what the 90s were for me. If I can encapsulate some thoughts on things that were building up to me understanding where I was, what I was doing in September 11th. And obviously that was some years later. So, okay, let's talk about September 11th, 2001. Okay, so where was I September 11th, 2001? Well, first and foremost, I was the age of 16. I was a junior? I think I was a junior, I want to say. I remember this because I was in an elective class. and I was sitting in Cisco Systems. I remember we were learning about telnetting, so I know before we got the TV on in the classroom, a bunch of us were trying to do what we were telnetting, right? Our version now of messaging, the first messaging parts of messaging one another on computers. So I just remember us doing that morning, and I was older. So what we were watching, we had turned on after the first. We had heard someone that was kind of browsing through news reports that there was this plane that had hit one of the towers at the World Trade Center in New York City, and our teacher had left the class for some reason. I think somebody had stepped in. I remembered that our teacher just wasn't there. So a bunch of us, I recall, is saying like, yeah, you're lying. That's not real. Whatever. Like, who would do something like that? And then someone brought in we had like the AV TV sitting. And if you know what the AV TV, right, audio visual, we had a TV. And then we turned it on, watching one of the local news stations. And I don't remember what that news station was. But what I do know is that we were watching, we apparently just missed the second. We had missed the second plane hitting the second tower, and we were like, "Whoa!" So they were showing like the recaps, right? The re-images of things that were caught with the planes hitting. What we did see, and what made us probably most scared, was watching as people were apparently falling from the buildings, and you could hear like in the videos, like even the news anchors had that level of fear in their voice, like, oh my god, like there's people, those are people, like you thought there were pieces of debris, right, where you say, oh, I saw these parts of the explosion, those are parts of the building falling off. No. When they knew that those were people jumping from the building, that's when we were probably the most affected. That's when we would like look at each other, like, right, back and forth, and you saw like real fear. And I guess being older, we were astonished. I mean, what are we gonna do? I know some people were like, hey, I actually have family in New York. I did talk to my mom. You had people wanting to go home. There was real fear. There was this thought that the people you loved could be affected, and so I know that some of our teachers tried to keep the lessons light that day. I eventually did make it home. I know that they canceled one of my after school, whether it was soccer or band. Something was canceled in the afternoon because I didn't stay after school like I normally would, and I was able to go home. I took the bus home that day, and the stories continued. Shock, right? I'm a 16-year-old, and I don't think I was quite right. What I do know about that was what was kind of leading after that was the year, right? Marching band. We were supposed to go to the Rose Parade, be in the Rose Parade for the start, right, of the end of our marching season. We were invited. We're super excited. I just know that my mom, following September 11, had some issues flying, genuine issues flying. This fear of your safety on flights, and she elected not to go, and it was almost going to pull me out. I know a few parents that pulled their students out of going to the Rose Parade, and the need for now like changing formations, certain things, and I had to plead. I was like, no, I want to go. I just know that those were like, again, I'm 16. I just remember like after it happened, I kind of moved on, right? Certain things, but that's where I was in September 11, 2001. I was 16 years old, and I was in a high school class talking about technology when we had those first planes those first parts of real terror hit the homeland. So that's where I was. So when was the war on terrorism? When did that really have true meaning for me? I think I was impacted. I knew people, but when it first truly hit me, and I had a real understanding of loss, of a feeling of my own mortality, was on December 21st, 2015. There was a report of 4 OSI special agents and 2 security forces defenders that were killed by a suicide bomber riding a motorcycle near Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan while they were on joint patrol. Those members were Major Adriana M. Volderbruggen. She was 36, from OSI 9th Field Investigation Squadron, Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. You had Staff Sergeant Michael A. Cinco, 28, OSI 11th Field Investigation Squadron, Joint Base San Antonio, Randolph, Texas. You had Staff Sergeant Peter W. Taub, who was 30, OSI Detachment 816, Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota. You had Staff Sergeant Chester J. McBride, 30, OSI Detachment 405, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. You had Honorary Special Agent Tech Sergeant Joseph G. Lim, 45, from the 105th Security Forces Squadron at Stewart Air National Guard Base, New York. And you had Honorary Special Agent Staff Sergeant Louis M. Bonacasas, 31, 105th Security Forces Squadron at Stewart Stewart Air National Guard Base, New York. Why was this an important day for me when you start talking about this war on terrorism? Is because I had been less than 6 months into my job, joining and being selected and joining OSI myself. I remember this date vividly because it was a Monday. It was a staff meeting day, and there was already this level of solemnness, of what appeared sadness. No one was really speaking. It was different. You could tell. And not really knowing what's going on, you could tell people were kind of walking on eggshells. It wasn't until we got into the staff meeting that the official notification came down of the attack on these members and personnel. And what really hit me was the first time of seeing some people that I regarded as family break down. Some of the strongest people I know, and seeing the impact of it, of seeing what was your sisters, your brothers, in some respects, people you spend more time with your family, has left this earth, has passed. And then it really hit me as I participated some days later in seeing these members of being on it was a rainy day, of seeing members in formation on a tarmac, watching the dignified transfer of these 6 members headed back to the United States from Ramstein Air Force Base. That's when it really hit me that these wars, these things, that fragility of life is enjoy every day is the nice way to put it. Love hard, love fast, and love without limits. there was definitely some a bunch of memories and smiles. The wish that this wasn't the reason some people were getting back together after seeing without seeing each other, but there was this reverence for life. And then some years later, it had even more meaning as I went on my own first deployment, not to the Middle East, but in my own way. After my deployment, I thought about the fact that those members would have been heading home around the same time I was heading home. It was during what we call the rotation. Those members didn't get to go home. They didn't get to see their loved ones. And I think after my own deployment, I truly understood. I understood the loss of the potential for danger to my life, and what I was willing to give for the protection of myself, of others, myself, of our country, of something that was greater, way greater than myself. And man, that still affects me now. Still, even then, I was now into my, I was 30, over 30. I think this is when I truly know. I came into my own and understanding. And I thank them for their sacrifice. I thank all of them for their sacrifice, of the unknowing of what they did was still important. What I've done is still important. So that's when the War on Terror really had meaning for me. It's December 21st of 2015. Yeah. Okay, so the so what of, here we are, September 11th, 2021. What does that even mean now? I am not going to even equate this to us, and I say us, the armed forces being pulled out of Afghanistan. One is separate than the other, though I do want to talk about a little bit about that first. Well, 20 years. We say we went to war, but the real action that occurred was that we sent the armed forces to war. We, as America, were at war, but the people that were doing the action were armed forces members. And so what's important about 20 years later is that there has been people within the armed forces for 20 years that spent a lot of their deployments, their time, their life, gave their life to that particular war. And to minimize and to, I don't even know any other words, to not show proper reflection for what they actually gave, the emotions, the everything, is quite, I don't even know. I just know that those members that spent their time, gave of themselves, physically, mentally, emotionally. What you did had meaning, whether that be in that time and space, and even now. I think we neglect to understand the importance of what presence the United States had in that space, had done for stability, geopolitically speaking, whether that we understand it or not. And I'm sure someone's going to write a book, someone's going to come out with papers, but there was, for 20 years, there was this level of stability to a region that is notorious for not having that stability in that particular country. And I'm talking about Afghanistan, not Iraq, but the fights aside, the people we lost, the armed forces, you did what you were called upon and asked to do, and I thank you for keeping me, my family, and everyone that you could safe, even when you were asked to take a life. And the we in the American system is that some people don't understand that. You were asked to do something that even the we, the greater we, couldn't necessarily do. And 20 years later, I thank you for doing that. I'm blessed to say that I have lived in a time where you were asked to do extraordinary and unbelievable things with not a lot of understanding, without a full plan in some respects, but you did it doing what you thought was right. Was everything always good? No. Was everything always grand? Absolutely not. But it was a clear understanding of what our armed forces truly can do, even in the limiting and the unknown scope of what you're supposed to do. So, thank you. And I love you, and blessed to all my friends that have served in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in the Middle East. For those that you lost, sending love. But the war in Afghanistan is not necessarily analogous to what I'm talking about now, which is what happened on September 11th, 2001. It is now 2011, 2021. What is September 11th now? And it is not the war in Afghanistan. It is not about the war. It's about, in my own opinion, remembrance, unity, love. My thoughts now, the meaning of 2011 and 2001, and now in 2021, is that America has never truly gone through the stages of grief. And those stages are denial, isolation, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. 2021, what I really want to see about the occurrence of that flashpoint in time, that unfortunate tragic event, is acceptance. I don't think America actually ever came to acceptance. We've gone back and forth. I think we tried, and that's why I bring up 2011, where we finally caught the person that we believe perpetuated the attack, so Osama bin Laden. But then after that, I think we hung on more to some anger. We've been living in a state of depression. We oft forget about those we lost, not for the families that have to deal with this every year, but with the fact of what are we truly remembering them with a hopeful gaze, right? With a look to the future. I don't think we've ever really done that. I think we see this event with true grief, and I'm not saying we should ever just get rid of that, but I think we're still in time dealing with denial, dealing with the bargaining, that anger, that depression. But what I truly want to see is this day become something of true remembrance. There's going to always be some that understanding for fragility of life, of mortality, but I want 2021 to actually see us turn toward acceptance. And I suppose, right, us being pulled out from a war of 20 years will sever that very quickly. Whatever's going on home domestically. But what I truly want to see and understand is true remembrance of hope, of understanding, right, of our morality, of mortality, of this acceptance of hope, of, again, unity, love. What happened in 2001, and as a 16-year-old, what I saw were Americans banding together, regardless of race, creed, stature. It would boggle my mind to see, even for that short period of time, what happens when we come together. That's what it means to me now, was the American unity. Things will often fracture us, and that's okay. It's always with this measure of hope. I think we as Americans take for granted a lot of the things that we just were born into, right? I could say I was born into something that was kind of innate. Till I went and saw other countries to immerse myself in the understandings that I was taking for granted those freedoms that were afforded to me under the Constitution or under certain laws, and that the stability of our country, of our government, is something that their people don't normally get. And so for me, this meaning is that I'm not taking for granted freedoms. I'm not taking for granted the life I continue to have when I can breathe and give. I want to love fast, love hard, love often, embrace those that I can, and also fight like hell if I have to. And move forward. Move with a purpose. Move with understanding. And that's what I really want this to mean. September 11th it will be here. Less like other days of remembrance of activity. But September 11th should be shown as our day that we had might. We had unity. We stand strong. And that's pretty dang cool. So if I could tell my 16-year-old me that 20 years later this is where I would be, say you did good, kid. And if 20 years later, if 20 years older me was able to talk to 10-year-old me seeing the first, 5-year-old me seeing the first Iraqi war, I would tell myself, things are still good. And there is hope. There is love. And there is courage. America has that metal that some just don't have. And I think we've come to understanding our own mortality, our own morality, our own hope. And this is the place to start. So if 2021 you get here, you get to see this day, have that in mind. There's hope, there's courage, there's a chance of tragedy and a fear and facing of your own morality and mortality, but there's always hope. So, yeah, there's the meaning for me. All right, thanks for sticking with me. Here we are. This is the end. What I know what I want to do. I have not talked to my friend Tiffany. She's my really good friend. She's one of those people I want to bring back to different mug talk. I keep saying that. There's a few people I want to bring on different mug talk, but she's probably gonna be listening to this and be like, oh, thanks for the invitation. Please tell me first. But I'm gonna invite her on here because she is an Air Force veteran. She did 20 years in the military, and I would love to get her perspectives on her time in, particular to her thoughts on September 11, 2001, her thoughts on the war on terrorism, and kind of what she sees 20 years later as an Air Force veteran, and what's the meaning to her. So look for that. Tiffany, this is your official invite. I would love to have you back on here to get your thoughts on this. But this is the closing. Thank you guys for listening in. Thank you, for checking it out. I'm hoping to do actual more mug talks. Next time I might have a whiskey glass or some beer. Again, different mugs. It doesn't have to be all about talking about coffee. Coffee talk. Sometimes it could be bar talk. Who knows? But thank you guys. I'm gonna keep throwing these out. These are things that I talk about are often helps me go through things that are on my mind, wrap around facts, opinions, just things. This is one of those that it's more catharsis to talk about because, this is a heavy topic for some, more than others. Thank you. This is my catharsis 20 years later to get it out there. And maybe I will do something like this again for something that I felt is quite impactful. But thank you for coming to the end. Next different mug talk that I will hopefully put out is we'll bring Tiffany back to talk about this and do the sign off. I'm sending peace, love, positivity, and good vibes. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.